Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Caregivers Just Don't Understand. It's an assertive communication training featuring Alana. And I can't pronounce your last name, Alana. I can barely pronounce your first name. Can you say your last name for me?
So my last name is Terrio. It's pronounced like the region of Ontario.
Well, thank you. That's very nice. Thank you very much. Alana Terrio. Okay. So, well, we're just going to record the session and hopefully get some good questions and answers and all that stuff. So, thank you very much, and I'll let Alana take it away.
Okay. Hi, guys. I wanted to give you the plan for this time. I was planning to meet for about an hour and a half. It's a small group, so we may not need that much time. We'll check in with each other in a while. I wanted to talk first about what assertiveness is and compare it to what passiveness is and aggressiveness is, so we can make sure we're talking about the same thing and understanding each of those approaches. There will definitely be time for questions and comments throughout the session. Most of these things have been more casual chats or conversations, but I think this is a pretty difficult topic, and a lot of people have different experiences on that. So I'm structuring it a little bit more than what we usually do. I think, Emily, you could probably take a minute to do some technical housekeeping. If more people show up, we're going to use a hand-raising feature. There's also a chat window. Emily, you're better at explaining that stuff than I am.
Yeah, if you look at the bottom of your screen, it should say something like participants or something like that. And for me, it says manage participants, and I can mute people and take people off mute and stuff like that as the host. And so it also has an option where you can raise your hand. Do you see that? It's at the very bottom of your screen. There's like all these little features, and it just says like, what does it say if you're in? Participant?
Click on participants, then a little window pops up, and you can click raise hand.
Yeah.
Now, we don't need that right now, and I'll be checking imagery very regularly. But just in case a lot of people show up, we'll use that, okay?
I recommend, if you're not speaking, to mute yourself as well. Not be, and to just unmute yourself when it's time to talk. Just because any background noise can sometimes be really distracting. So that's just a recommendation. Okay, all right.
And the last thing I wanted to say was kind of a disclaimer. While I have a lot of experience in hiring, I've been doing it for 35 years. I was a lousy employer for a long time, and I've learned over the years how to get better. But at this point in my life, I wanted to let you all know I'm coming from a certain kind of privilege. I have a partner with pretty good income, so I'm able to pay out of pocket when the state funding isn't enough. I try to be very aware that other people that I'm working with and teaching do not have that level of privilege. I also live in a community that has 24-hour emergency backup attendance. Again, a type of privilege that most people don't have. I also have not used family providers for a very long time. But I know some of you may be dealing with family members doing your care. So I'm coming from a perspective of not doing that anymore. I really try to hear where you guys are coming from and address those situations as well. But I think it's important to all know where I'm coming from, but also know that I have been there, been very poor, been far from family and with no backup, and then I've also been totally dependent on family. So I'm coming from a lot of different perspectives. And if you feel like I'm not hearing you, please let me know, okay? Any questions before we start? Okay, hi. But I first want to talk about what assertiveness is. And because we're so small, maybe we can go around the room and find out what you think assertiveness is. Who wants to start? I'll start picking on you guys if you don't volunteer.
I think it's stating like your opinion or what you want with confidence and not necessarily being nervous about it.
Okay, so confidence is a big part of that. What else? Maria, you're making a funny face. I'm going to pick on you.
I was just thinking I make funny faces when I'm thinking, but
That's what I figured. That's why I want to know what's going on in there.
I would say it's also stating what you want in a very like matter of fact and clear and concise way. Like really communicating what it is that you want.
So being clear, being concise. Okay, very good. What about you, Alex? Do you have anything to add?
Not really. I think they covered it
Okay.
pretty well. To me, being assertive is also being specific. What was that?
Specificity for sure. Emily?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I always think about things as far as what they're not. And so, assertive communication isn't passive communication. So, it's much more dominant, I guess. It's a dominant approach. It's taking control, rather than, accepting someone else's direction.
So it's being
Direction.
It's being in charge.
Yeah.
Yes, good. The only thing I didn't hear you all say, and I want to add, is super important, is it doing all those things, really being clear, being direct, being specific, all those things. But it also means doing it with respect. So making sure it's respectful, making sure it's done with an openness so that you can still hear feedback from the other person. So I would only add that. Okay? Now, what's aggressiveness? What's aggressive behavior?
Being like overly dominant, overly powerful, and that kind of like you know everything and that what you say goes.
Okay. And it's pretty easy to see how that could be mixed up with some of those other descriptions we just had for assertiveness. By being in charge, being specific, being clear, could become aggressive. What do you think? What's that fine line? You said overly, Jen. What does that mean?
Just coming across as like being the ultimate like authority and that you know that better and that there's no other way, that it's your way or the higher way, basically.
Okay, good. Maria, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I was about to say that it's basically, to me, it's like offering or demanding an ultimatum where you're not really respecting what the other person has to say, but you're just saying this is the way it is and you can take it or leave it.
Right.
I see it also as like one-sided, where there's not another person. The receiver is not considered, so it's not a two-way street of communication.
It's fairly absolute, huh?
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Alex? Okay. Right. I mean, exactly. I mean, often it comes in the form of an attack. a personal attack, ignoring somebody's opinions. Mostly I feel like it has to do with disregarding where the other person is coming from. And if you're not able to hear them or even ask where they're coming from, it can become fairly aggressive. What about passivity? What is being passive? Oh, we have another person who just logged on by phone. Who is that?
Hi, this is John Kerr.
Hi, John. I'm glad you can make it.
Yeah, sorry I'm late. I just got off work.
It's okay. It's okay. We were just discussing the differences between assertiveness, aggressiveness, and now we're talking about what passivity is. Can you guys give me some examples of what passive behavior, passive language is like?
I think it's, in the spirit of a two-way communication, it's where so if you're a passive person, you're a receiver of communication, you're not necessarily an instigator of communication, you're pretty much just, you're not participating as much, you're not as in control. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
I think passivity involves waiting to be spoken to. So never initiating that conversation, but waiting until someone else does so.
Okay. Any other ideas about it?
I think sometimes when you're passive, you kind of like beat around the bush. You're kind of shy and coy, and maybe you don't approach something when it should be, and you kind of just wait and let it go until things become a bigger problem. But then you're really nervous and hesitant to approach it, and you don't approach it in the best way.
Okay. Kind of the opposite of what we were all saying earlier about what assertive behavior is. Good. Often we don't, when we're being passive, we don't even state our opinion at all. What are some of the reasons why people are passive?
People don't like confrontation. They're afraid of how the person on the other end is going to react or respond.
Other reasons? Some people don't feel they deserve to be heard. They don't have confidence. There may be fear, like what you just described, Jen, but there's also just, it's very ingrained in a lot of us that our opinion doesn't matter. It's not as important. Or it's stupid, or all these things. We can pass a lot of judgments on ourselves, and those silent judgments can make us be passive.
I think to kind of expand on that, I think guilt has a lot to do with this. Kind of an internalized guilt that we often experience a lot of as growing up. Just that we feel bad to interrupt, or we feel bad about about needing something when somebody else is preoccupied, or having having to use the bathroom as a kid when my mom was in the middle of cooking dinner. Like, all of these experiences, kind of made me feel a little bit more hesitant or guilty about approaching the need for assistance.
You're talking about feeling the guilt of being a burden.
Right.
Yeah. Yep, I understand. Have people experienced that very much? Feeling guilty about being a burden, so not saying what you need?
It happens all the time.
Yeah. Maria, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I do, but it's more of an internalized guilt. Like, it's something that I don't readily notice a lot until it just happens to blow up in my face and kind of, present itself. Like, I wasn't fortunate when I was growing up. I wasn't in a situation where my parents would ever make me feel guilty for having to use the restroom or needing assistance with anything else. But at the same time, I do feel sort of a guilt when I have to pick my battles in terms of the ableism that I see in everyday society. And sometimes that guilt is overwhelming.
Do you feel guilt about the ableism you see? Can you give me an example?
Just like when having to justify the things that I shouldn't have to justify needing, be it services or accommodation.
So it's sort of like feeling uncomfortable about being too demanding, which is a little bit different than what Emily was describing about being a burden to the family. It's probably the other side of the same coin, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay, good. Good descriptions. Now, this is harder. I'm going to ask y'all to get personal. And for each of you, John, you can't see everybody right now. There are 7 of us. I was going to ask each person to, oh, hi, Eric. I was going to ask each person to give an example of when they feel like recently they've been passive when they wish they hadn't been. And particularly talking about with your care providers, or whether they're formal care providers or informal, more casual situations. When you give me an example when you were passive or when you hesitated.
Are you talking to me, Alana?
I'm talking to all of you. John, do you have an example?
Oh, okay, yeah, sure, I do. I had a caregiver recently who I was having troubles with her coming late all the time, and I was very passive about approaching the issue and kind of let it go on, way longer than it should have. And, when I did finally bring it up, it was kind of at the point where the behavior was accepted by both of us at that point. So it was a lot harder to rectify because I had let it go on for so long, but definitely a situation where being passive did not help at all.
Yeah, that's a pretty classic example. I think most of us have probably experienced that. Thank you. Who else?
I guess last night I was about to do my nightly exercises and stretching and massaging with my newest PCA, who isn't exactly very responsive to direction when I tell her I need something done differently or better. And I kept trying to tell her how to properly support my arm so we didn't strain it. And she kind of just acted like she didn't know what I was talking about, even though I think she knew, she just didn't want to do it. And I kept trying to redirect her and redirect her, and she kept kind of just whiny and pouty about it. And I eventually just kind of gave up and let it go, when I really should have pushed her to keep doing it the right way.
And I remember you posted about this in the LMG group.
Mhm.
And I have some ideas for you that we can get into later about how to approach that.
Okay.
That's a classic example also, where you're either too tired to have the confrontation, or maybe you're afraid of being hurt more, or, there's a lot of things that could happen in a situation like that. Who else? I'm going to start picking on you guys. So, examples? Maria, you were talking about having a hard time when you see an accommodation you shouldn't even have to ask for. Can you give us an example of something that you had to deal with recently where you just decided not to do it?
Yeah, so this isn't related to assistant care or anything like that, but recently it was announced that the Rolling Stones were coming to Atlanta and playing at a local stadium here, and they were doing a pre-sale for just early people that wanted to buy tickets. And my parents really wanted to go see the Rolling Stones, and I was like, okay, I'll try to get the family some tickets through the pre-sale. And basically the way the seating was done for the pre-sale, it wasn't giving me the options for ADA seating that I knew were available. And I went ahead and emailed the customer service representative and got a response back, but it basically, he told me to, give him a call back, and I couldn't because I was at work. So when I got off work, I ended up calling them and just going through person after person after person, trying to sort it out to the point where I got tired of explaining to them what I wanted and what I knew should be available to me. And even though in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, man, I should have just read them the ADA guidelines and been like, hey, this isn't right what you're doing. But at that point, I didn't have the energy to really deal with that. And so I decided to just do what they told me to do and wait until Monday for when the other actual tickets went on sale. And by that time, they were pretty much long gone and the prices were raised. So it was a big bummer that I had spent that energy but didn't get what I wanted out of it, and B, that I had to even expend that energy to get something that should have been really simple to get.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so fatigue is a reason why they sometimes become more passive. When we just give up, we're just tired. It's hard to fight the fight all the time. Okay. Eric, we haven't heard from you. Do you have any examples of when you found yourself being passive and had regrets about it? Are you able to speak down the mic, or do you type? I'm not sure how this works for you.
Right now.
I heard your voice.
I admitted you.
Okay, I'll do it now. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Well, I can't really think of anything right now.
Okay. That's okay. How about you, Alex? No? I keep picking on you and you keep looking at me funny.
I had a hard time thinking of an example for a while, but then I realized when you mentioned exhaustion, I have a second language learner, or I don't even know if she's a learner. She doesn't seem to want to learn, but we're both I have very limited Spanish and she has very limited English, and there are many times where I just don't go there with her because I don't want to try to figure out. I'm not as what's the word? Years ago when I was younger, I used to go through this. I used to really take the effort to learn the language or figure out ways to communicate, and I've gotten just very lazy about it. And so as long as we have a very strict routine, then I just I don't deviate from the routine. And so I just don't have the energy to want to just take the extra time to try to find a way to get what I need done. So, yeah.
How about some moments we've had recently in which we were assertive, that you're proud of, that you feel like you're that you either regularly do well or you did exceptionally well and surprised yourself?
Being sick for the last few days, I've had some bathroom emergencies and like last night I had a BiPAP emergency, and I usually hem and haw before asking for help from my boyfriend because I just hate bothering him. And so like last night I was really proud of myself because I was just like, I need to sit up, I need to pop, and or whatever, because the BiPAP was like filling me with so much air. And I was just very direct, and I told him what I needed, and he responded. And I didn't apologize, and it was 4:30 in the morning. I woke him up, but I was just very direct, and I said thank you, and I said, I'm so happy you were here to help me with this, because it's very scary. And I just said that I this is what needs to be done, and it got done. But usually I'm more hemmy-hawty about it,
I like that. Hemmy-hawty. I know it well. Who else? Who's had a recent assertive moment? It could be very mundane. It doesn't matter. Go ahead, Jen.
Well, my agency that handles like the payroll and paperwork for my PCAs just sent out some new contracts basically, and there was a couple of things in there that I completely disagree with, and I contacted my case manager and pointed out what was wrong with these areas, and basically told them that if the DHS does not require those policies, they can't force them on me. And I've done this before with them, and because I'm so assertive about it, they always back down and don't enforce it.
So you've been very clear with them, so that the specificity that we were talking about earlier and the clarity. Are you happy with the exchange? Do you still have an amicable relationship with them, or is it more hostile?
Well, I've been with them for like 12 years, and they know I'm very well connected in the Minneapolis Human Services field, and they know that I know the rules and that they can't try and tell me otherwise. So they know I know what I'm talking about, and then they back down.
Okay, good. How about the rest of you? An assertive moment, Maria, John, Alex, Eric?
This wasn't very recent, but it was maybe like a year ago. I was trying to get some home modifications paid for with my community-based waiver, and the waiver administrators decided at the last minute that they were no longer paying for automatic door openers, which had always been covered in the past. And it was really, really stressful for me to have to fight that, but I knew that I needed that in order to remain independent and to gain independence. And so I ended up working like the appeal up the chain to the point where we saw like a judge that actually had a fair hearing for me and my case, and I ended up getting like a free legal aid for me and all this other stuff, and we won, and I got a door opener, and I was very proud of myself. And right now I'm going through the process of applying for additional hours because I am planning on living independently this year. And when I was talking to my case manager about it, I was a little bit hesitant to do it just because of the previous court situation, but she assured me that she thinks I'll be fine because they don't want to mess with me because they know I'll take them to court.
They know you're a badass now. That's awesome.
I had a similar waiver situation where I needed battery backup for my respiratory equipment, and I needed the battery in my suction replaced. And it was a suction that the waiver bought like a few years ago. And they told me that they don't buy batteries anymore, and there was nothing I could do about it. And I had actually ended up in a hospital because our power went out and I went into respiratory distress. So I appealed it to the Human Services Court, and I went into the hearing with an 8-page presentation about why I need these battery backups and why it's beneficial for the county to pay for it. And when the judge issued her ruling 2 months later, all of her reasons for why the county had to pay for it were exactly all the reasons that I had presented myself. So I was pretty proud that the judge agreed with everything that I had already said.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And not only were you specific, you were also confident in knowing what you needed and why you needed it. So that confidence and specificity went really well together. So I wanted to, well, does anybody else have an example of an assertive moment they've had recently? Come on, I know you guys have a little assertiveness in there somewhere. Okay. All right. Well, I want to talk about language. It's sometimes, particularly as an employer, it's really difficult to walk that line between assertiveness and aggressiveness. I've always been teased about by my family about being bossy. I'm the oldest sister. I'm bossy anyway. I joke about it. I embrace it, but I also try to be kind about it. I feel like for so many years I was very passive and apologetic about my needs, and when I finally found my voice and started being more clear about what I needed, I felt that big sister hat go on, and I have been bossy sometimes. It's something my boyfriend teases me about also. But there are certain things that you can pay attention to find the difference between bossy or aggressive behavior and assertive behavior. And a lot of that comes out in language as well as attitude. So I wanted to give you some examples of language that can work better. One is focusing on specific behavior or facts about a situation instead of your opinion about the situation. And this could mean, and this is when you're instructing someone, for instance, how they're doing the dishes. That's a big thing. I have to tell people every now and then. The dishes weren't that clean yesterday, so my morning person had to redo them. As opposed to saying, you did a crappy job on the dishes, which is a really different approach, and it makes someone you're working with feel very different about the feedback that you're giving them. So that's a difference. An opinion, saying they did a crappy job versus how the dishes looked at the end of their shift. Can someone give me another example of something that comes up in your daily routine that can be said one way and then the other?
I have a hard time with my hair. I think this is a very good example too, because your hair and how it looks is a very subjective thing, right? For instance, when she parts my hair, like I want my part in a certain place, and she'll part it, and I'll be pointing exactly where I want the part, but it's like she's not, like she does it all lopsided or something, or like she does these goofy things with my hair gel. Like she'll put the hair gel in, or not the hair gel, but the cream or whatever I use, the frizz removal cream or whatever. She puts it in the hair, and then she picks up my ponytail and she like wipes her hands with the stuff on it like it's a towel. Like my hair is like it's the weirdest thing. And I partially is I don't know Spanish for like scrunch. And, and I try to mimic like what it needs to look like. And then she'll say like, do you like it? And after going through all of it, I don't really know how to address it half the time. And so it's a choose my battles kind of moment. And so some days I'm just like, I make her start again, or I like butt fiddle with it more. And other days I'm just like, whatever, I'll go looking crazy. And I just go. I have a very difficult time with that kind of stuff. Like the battle cry. Like I don't know. Yeah.
I had an issue very similar recently, and actually she ended up quitting that day for other reasons. But she was assisting me in putting my makeup on, and I was directing her. And like I said earlier, I try to be very specific in my assertiveness. I'm not just going to say you're doing it wrong. Instead, I was saying, I think I directed her to brush the brush up towards my cheekbone rather than down towards my jaw. Very specific and very neutral tone. I wasn't copying attitude with her. And she got upset because she felt like she was doing it wrong. But rather than just being upset with doing it wrong, she turned it around to me and was like, well, you want it different every day. I was
I think your computer's freezing.
my right to wear my makeup different every day if I want. If I choose to. Can you guys hear me? I think my internet's unstable. But I just point out to her that if I want to wear my makeup differently every day, that's my prerogative. But I was giving her specific directions on how I wanted it, and I needed her to not be upset about that.
That's a really good example, and it often will have workers have different expectations than our own when they come in to do work for us. Some people really expect a very rigid routine, and they expect to do the same thing every day. And sometimes we comply with that because it's easier, such as in the situation Emily described with a person who's not strong with English speaking skills.
Sometimes it's not worth the time to argue with them. And I don't mean argue. I never argue with my assistants, but to take the time to correct them, sometimes it's not worth that time and energy. But at the same time, it is our lives, and we do have the right to live the way we want to.
Well, and I think it's sometimes a mistake that we make as employers. Like John, what you described earlier about not taking the time or being assertive enough about your assistant who kept showing up late. So if we don't take the time, even though it feels like we don't want to take it, we don't have it, we're in a hurry, we're too tired, we're too grumpy, but sometimes we still have to do it. And that's sort of the sucky thing about being an employer, is we have to take responsibility for those things. Otherwise, the domino effect happens. And like what John was describing, this worker kept coming late, so it became expected that she was late, and it became normal. So now, does anybody have suggestions for what Alex could say either at the beginning of a hiring process or in the middle of a situation like that where this worker doesn't want to do things differently every day?
I like to tell people, yeah, I can speak to that, Alana. When I first hire someone, I like to make it very clear that I am picky, but I also try to define the word picky as everybody is picky. I say, I'm sure you like things done a certain way. You like to do your hair a certain way. You like your shirt to look a certain way. you like to feel a certain way about how your clothes feel, how your makeup is done, or whatever. I try to kind of get my caregivers to relate to the fact that I like things done a certain way, but everybody does, So if you kind of set that tone right off the bat, it kind of avoids any issues down the road of people getting an attitude if you are very specific about what your preferences are. You have that right to be comfortable and, to look how you want to, just like everybody else does.
And this gets into what Jen was asking about earlier, about her worker who is too rough with her and in a hurry and moving quickly. Now, in this situation, where the worker's relatively new, the interview's over and the job offer's over, so there's already a working relationship happening. Does someone have suggestions for Jen on how to interrupt this potentially bad pattern from developing? How does she have a good conversation with this worker?
I have a couple I can mention. Number one, I should do this more and I don't, but take photographs or take video of things being done right. So that way you can reference those with new people. Also, with my attendants with my hair, I used to have hairstyle names. So I'd be like, I want the quinceañera today, and my attendant knew exactly what the quinceañera was. Or I'd be like, I want sorority girl, and then she would put it in sorority girl. And then I would say, I want, and so like we would have these ways, and I had like a specific name that basically symbolized the hair, and it worked. And I haven't done that in a while. I need to get back to that. I have Sunday jeans that I always seem to wear on Sunday. So even if I'm going to wear them on Saturday, I'll say I want to wear the Sunday jeans. And so I have to come back to like kind of those target names. As far as being handled in a way that, or going through a procedure like massage or stretching, I don't do those things right now, but I mean, in retrospect with my lift and things like that, I tend to, as a teacher, focus on rewards. So like finding all the things that they're doing right and then lead them to the proper procedure by going in the right direction. So like, like going, I really like how you're lifting my leg here, but all you need to do is move it a little bit more to the right or something, and then it'll be like totally perfect. Like I really like this, but this is, then following that up with a direction. So that way they're feeling like they're not failing, because sometimes it can kind of go into like a spiral of fail. And, and that can get really disheartening, and you want to give up and you get tired and you're frustrated and you're not focusing on anything. So I try to sometimes focus on what's good and then turn into, then teach. And that's another thing. It's the thing about it that is, people that can take care of themselves have the luxury of deciding when they can be lazy, and we cannot be lazy really ever. We can't relax, unfortunately. We can come up with tricks to relax, but honestly, we can't, like, we were talking about, we can't let exhaustion or just like the constant, just wanting to be just chill about it and relax. We can't let that happen, or it can get crazy. But at the same time, we can't turn into micromanagers either. It's a weird balance. So yeah, sorry, I talked too much.
What you were saying about giving directions and, making it a compliment and then correcting. The other thing I find with that is the more that I can rationalize and explain why I want things done a certain way, the more responsive they are to it. So, like, rather than just saying, move your arm over, I'll say, if you put your arm further under my knee, you'll have a better grip of me, and then you'll be able to lift me better or set me down better. Or, sometimes things seem silly, like, please put the towel in the left side of the top drawer. You're like, well, does it matter if it's on the left side or in the middle?
Yeah, I'm the same way too. Like I try to both encourage good behavior as well as to when something is just a little bit off, I try to sort of have make a statement where there is a cause and an effect. So like one of my assistants, when she was starting out, she was having a hard time pulling my pants up, and I was trying to explain to her that like that's how physics works. If you hold on to my pants on one side, but then try to pull them up on the other side, you're gonna get some resistance. And I try to like say, well, if you move your arm just a little bit more, it'll make it easier for you, and make it sort of a cause and effect relationship where she says, well, okay, if I do it this way, then it'll be easier for me and for you.
So sometimes, like I will say, you know, if you do something like this versus that, it will be better for you or me in this way. But like, for instance, this one doesn't give me a chance to tell her. She just like immediately jumps and does it before I can finish explaining what it is that I want her to do or to do differently or better. And then it's already done and it's done the wrong way, and that might be uncomfortable, or we'll have to like start all over.
Yeah, that's a more difficult situation. It seems like that can happen when the suggestions that Emily and Alex and Maria have made fail. I mean, positive reinforcement is worth its weight in gold. So, like saying what someone does well before criticizing is really helpful. Also, providing a reason for why you want something done and maybe breaking it down. Usually, the reason I found can't be explained at the very beginning. These people are so overwhelmed by all the details. Usually, in my experience, reason comes later, like 2 weeks in. Oh, I wanted to tell you why I do this in this order, so that it's easier for you to remember how to do it. And I usually wait because I know they're on overload. But Jen, in the situation you're describing, you've got someone who learned somewhere else. They have in their mind the right way of doing things. They're not bothering to listen to you, and it's sort of an aggressive behavior on their part, which I suspect they don't even realize they're doing. So having the empathy about that is in your own mind is probably really helpful. But I think also making it more of an emotional experience is really helpful. I just went through the same problem with a worker who had been with me for a long time, but who had been going through recently some very stressful things in their life. So they were moving faster. Everything was so routine that they didn't realize they were being rough with me. What I did, and I tried different things. Whoa, slow down. Okay, I need you to do this differently. I kept trying to interrupt the behavior, and it wasn't working. And it wasn't any maliciousness. It was a person being on autopilot, thinking they were doing the right thing. So what I did is I said, this is what's happening for me. I think that you're really good at what you do and you're going on autopilot. And I wanted you to know that I'm actually starting to be afraid when you touch it. I don't think you're trying to hurt me, but you're moving so quickly that it's making me flinch and it's making me tense up. I mean, I think if you make yourself more vulnerable, if you emotionally say what is going on, a good worker, someone who cares about doing a good job, will apologize and think twice before they do it. But it does mean you have to reveal yourself a little bit more. You have to say, I started getting scared I get scared when you move so fast. I think when you make yourself even if you're exaggerating how vulnerable you feel, maybe you're not really scared, but using those words sometimes is what it takes to get to someone who's on autopilot. So you might experiment with a couple of different phrases or before she starts putting you to bed, say, I really appreciate how you're trying to get through all these steps. I know at your old job, you had to do it all very quickly. It's more important for me that you go slower. And I notice I'm getting scared when we move so quickly. I don't know if this is addressing your specific problems, and that's not so important, but I wanted to see what you think about that kind of language, how to be more vulnerable emotionally and let her know how you're feeling without attacking what she's doing. Do you think you could think of some things to say?
I think that's definitely helpful and definitely something I will give a try. I also think a large part of the issue is, maybe when you're working as a CNA in an inpatient unit, the patient may not direct their needs or their cares, and they have to figure out on their own how to accomplish whatever they need to do for the patient. And they just aren't used to someone like me having a specific way of needing to do stuff or wanting to do stuff. And they're just not used to waiting for me to direct them. They just jump in and find their own way of doing it.
Right, and I think that some of what John said earlier, when he does his interviews, he tells people that he's picky. I do the same thing, and I bring a lot of humor into it, and sometimes if I didn't do it enough and I have an employee already working for me, I might have to say, I'm used to you. I know you're used to doing this in a different way. I just hired a guy actually who worked in a residential facility for nonverbal people with developmental disabilities and severe physical disabilities. So he was dressing them and moving them without them being able to tell him what to do. And I told him right up front, I said, I'm actually a little nervous about hiring you because you've not been verbally directed by the people who you're working for. And I recognize this is different. And my nervousness is that you might have habits about doing things without checking with me first. So I actually really directly, specifically, confidently expressed what my apprehension was and had a dialogue with him about it. And I know, Jen, you asked on the Facebook page about communication, and that's what we're talking about. I think if you are transparent about where you're coming from, I have this fear, I have this habit, I have this expectation. I'm picky. I'm a little bossy sometimes, so it's okay for you to tell me to back off. I warn people I'm a nightmare multitasker, and I tell them, will you please tell me to shut up? Because I'm telling you to do 5 different things at once, and I know it's very difficult. So I give them permission to give me a bad time. And that will work for different personalities. I use a lot of humor. But I think being transparent about your style can really help. And it sounds like she's new enough that you can have those conversations right up front.
I do have this training manual that I wrote that is everything I need to know about me and how to do stuff for me. And I set it out by explaining that I'm just like everybody else and I have my own preferences for how to do things, and not that their way is wrong, but it's, I prefer it done my way. And I think I just expect that people are going to read it and absorb it when I'm finding that they don't necessarily read what's written. And maybe that at the beginning of their training, that should be one of the first things that I verbally go over with them.
And probably not just in the beginning, but throughout. You might highlight one task per shift or one area per week. I think also saying, I understand this is a lot of information, Am I overloading you? You have to check in and say, is this too much right now? Do you have any questions about why we're doing this? Also, I wouldn't depend too much on written material sometimes. I'd say about a third of my workers, a third to a half, have learning disabilities and don't do very well with written words. Or like in Emily's situation, English isn't their first language or things like that. So I think and a lot of people are not willing to admit that they're not that literate. So it's something that you kind of have to keep an eye on and try and intuit without embarrassing people. I think another approach is, wow, the way they did that last night didn't work that great for me. Do you have any ideas about how we can do it? I mean, of course, you know how you want it done. But sometimes if you open it up to them and say, hey, let's talk about different ways we can do this to make it work well for both of us, even if you end up convincing them to do it the way that you want it done for all of the reasons you want it done that way, it gives them an opportunity and a feeling of participation and control. A lot of people are not comfortable being robots or just hands. They want to have agency in the work that they do. And sometimes that is in direct conflict with us having control over our lives. So being empathetic to that reality and giving them opportunities to give feedback to us about how to do things, it can empower them. It can also free them to say, wow, I think we do this in a really bad way. And I've had a few people say, this is really a waste of time, or this is a really tedious way to do it. Have you ever thought about doing it this way? And I say, oh my God, I can't believe I never thought of that. Thank you. And we've improved the routine. So to open up that dialogue so they can criticize you and offer ideas, and being open to that is really, really important. So I bet you could open some dialogues with her, Jackie,
I wanted
about
to.
how to do things different.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to just say that also when you're working with somebody in a step-by-step thing, like Alana was saying, overwhelming them, like overloading them with too much, it might be too much. And so if you do need them to slow down or at least to focus, I would just say, like, I need to take a break. Like, not, or I need to take a break. I need this. So I need us to take 10 seconds. I need a break right now. And I need to focus. Like, you're actually saying, I need you to take a break. I need you to focus. We're putting it up, and then I need to take a break now. I'm getting overwhelmed. And then, then they're gonna stop and chill. That's one thing to do. Another thing I wanted to bring up, oh God, I almost lost it. Oh crap. Oh, I don't know. I lost it. There was some other really amazing point I was just about to make, and it just went away. Huh? Oh yeah. I do that, and I do the I need a break with my boyfriend a lot. He's very, very quick to respond, and he's almost a little ADD, and so he doesn't like to listen, and so I have to request that we stop and take a break. Oh, and smiling, which is so weird because, like, I absolutely hate it when people tell me to smile when I don't feel like smiling. But sometimes when things are going, like, horribly wrong, and it's like with Dan especially, like, it's like a downward spiral. When things start with him and he's not listening and he's not focused and he's rushing and he's helping me and I'm not used to him helping me, I'll just sit there and I'll take a second and I'll just smile, or I'll laugh, or I'll make a joke, or I'll be like, it's going great. I'll just say, like, this really sarcastic thing, and we'll start laughing. And then it kind of takes it off this, like, spiral, because it does. It's like one thing gets worse and then it gets worse, and it's like that. So you really have to break yourself of that now and then. And the third point I was going to make, which I just remembered, was when I went to college, I worked with all of these different PCAs in the dorm. And I was working with about 10 different people every day. And it was very hard to get used to, but then after a while I got used to people and they learned me, I learned them. But a couple of them were adamantly opposed to the way I wanted to be lifted. And we had big fights about it. I wanted to be cradle lifted because that's all I knew. And they were like, this hurts my back. I can't do this. I need to lift you this way. And it was so scary because it was this really creepy pivot lift that scared the crap out of me. And I thought I was going to break in a million pieces. And finally, there was just one very aggressive PCA that like insisted, and they like ganged up on me, and they're like, no, you're doing this lift. And they made me do the lift. And then now that is the best lift in the world. And they really did understand what was going on. And I had to like let go of my fear and let them teach me something. And so sometimes, not all the time, and sometimes the scariest stuff can actually, they might know what they're talking about. So it's good to take a second and negotiate and listen and value what their reasoning is behind it, because of them changing the lift, they saved their backs, and also that's helped me a lot. And it's people look at the lift I do and they're like, oh my, I'll never do it. I can never, ever, ever do it. But it's an amazing lift. So I'm really happy I learned it. So.
And what you did is you said, oh, I'm so afraid. And I think, again, showing your vulnerability. I'm afraid to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't like it. And having the conversation openly with the workers. And in that situation, maybe even saying, all right, I'll try it away, but we need a backup plan or something. If you really have so much fear about trying something new, or you just really think it's just the right idea, but the other person's really insistent, then you say, okay, I'm going to do it if we have this backup plan or this other strategy. This second person there to grab my butt, so I'm afraid I'm going to land on the floor. Or, I think being really open and transparent about how you feel about something is very, very important. So good, that's great examples. I had a couple other points about language. One is to avoid exaggerations. Instead, focus on being specific. It is so easy for us to say, you're always late. Is that fair? I mean, are they really always late? Or instead, you were late 3 times this week. And the way I approach that often is, I noticed you were more than 10 minutes late 3 days in a row. I have a 10-minute window with my workers. I say, I want you down time. I don't need you to call unless you've been more than 10 minutes late. And that's my rule. But some people push it so that every day they're 10 minutes late because they think it's okay. So I said, I noticed you've been 10 minutes late, 8 minutes late for 3 days in a row. What's going on? And I'll just, but I'm specific. I don't say you're always late. People get super defensive if you make an exaggeration. It's unfair. It's not professional. So I just want to remind people that that's the difference between aggressive and assertive language. Generalizations and exaggerations are pretty aggressive. And how many of you have heard about using I statements instead of you statements? Nodding head, Maria nodded her head. Emily, you have. How about you, Jen, Eric, Alex? You know what that means? Would someone give me an example of an I statement versus a you statement?
I need a break.
Versus, you're not doing it right, you need a break.
Or stop. You need to stop.
What's another I statement versus a you statement?
I need the dishes washed.
Mm-hmm. Versus you need to do the dishes?
Yeah.
Okay. How's that going in your household? Do people do what you need them to do, Eric?
Well, I'm living with my parents right now, and we're in the process of moving out, so that's not really an issue.
Right, it's different because you have a whole lifelong family dynamic going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll be testing a lot of this out soon. Cool. Other I statements? There's so many little examples. So, you know, I mean, it's a list of things to do, like Eric just said, you know.
Or are you saying like, when this happens, I feel this?
Yes. I like that situation, intense situation. Last night, I realized I was really tense after you left because we did things so quickly that I got stressed out. I would feel better if we slowed down the routine. I know you're in a hurry, and I appreciate that, but I want you to know I'm fine paying for the time it takes to really do this in a way that I'm comfortable. That's a whole bucket of I statements.
And also, when you say, when this happens, rather than when you do this. Like, if you say, when this happens, I feel this way. You know, that way you're avoiding the you. The you is a hard thing to avoid sometimes. But
I think saying you is okay in some situations. I think if you're being pretty even-handed about everything else. I have said, I've noticed that you have a habit. I noticed that you have a habit of moving really quickly. I have this woman who works for me, best housekeeper I've ever had. She's a speed demon. And I said, you have this habit. You're used to getting quadriplegics up and throwing them all around and doing it really quickly to get them out the door so they can get to class or work on time. I'm an old lady. That's what I told her. I said, I'm an old lady. I don't want to move that fast. I'm not in a hurry to get out the door. And so I need you to break these habits that you have. I need you to slow down with me. So you can be okay, especially because I'm saying it's a really great skill that you have, but it's not working for me. I'm still owning it. It's kind of an I statement. What you're doing doesn't work for me because it's too fast. So it takes practice. But I think if you work on those things, focusing on facts instead of opinions when you're talking to people, avoiding exaggerations, and focusing on statements. Those are 3 fundamental things that can help you be more assertive and not aggressive or passive.
I think also saying things like, I'm frustrated, I'm happy, I'm so relaxed right now. Like, using turning it into the positive as well. I statements can get kind of Oprah-like after a while. If I've had people use a lot of I statements with me, and I want to punch them in the face by the end of the I statement rant. I know what they are, and so when I hear them, I feel like it's almost patronizing. And so, I have to make sure that I don't overuse I statements, if that makes any sense, because then you can just seem very, I don't know what the word is. Just it's not the I statement overuser drives me insane.
So. It's very lingo and depersonalized. All of a sudden, it's not personal. It's very lingoized. I feel like I'd be terrified, if that's the word.
Right. I feel like Oprah's in my house or something. I want Oprah out. I had this roommate that I lived with for a while, and she would be like, and it was like she did it just like Oprah would tell you to do it. Emily, I need you to listen to me for a minute. Sometimes when I go to bed late, I feel very tired the next morning. I need to get extra sleep. So I'm going to need to put you to bed at 8:30 tonight. And I'm like, go fuck yourself. I was just like, I need you to go fuck yourself. Like, that is what I felt like saying after a while. So,
Well,
like,
it's condescending. And sure, as an employer, you're not being condescending as well. So have that little checklist in your head. When I'm saying these things, am I being condescending? Because it's not respectful. And again, to be assertive, it also includes us being respectful. And if we're feeling resentful about our workers or annoyed or impatient, at a certain point, we might have to have a more honest conversation with ourselves and with them about maybe it's not working out. Because we can't work with people we don't respect. And of course, that's a difficult situation because we also need the workers that we have. And you can't fire your parents, or you know what I'm saying. And I wanted to read what Eric just posted. He wrote, "Right now I'm in the process of moving out, so I don't have a lot of experience with people besides my parents. I got some good tips so far. I'm working on interviews. I hope I have an effective process." So yeah, and good luck, Eric. It's a big jump, and you're doing homework now, which is really good. So. Does anybody have any other specific? We only have a little over 10 minutes left, and I'm wondering if anybody has any specific communications problems they're having with their care providers that they want to talk about with this group. Nothing special going on. Okay. Any last minute advice for each other? Oh, Jen, were you about to say something?
I know it's not just me. There are a lot of people who don't do well with confrontation, especially when it's just you and the other person around. And I know me, when I am especially feeling a little uncomfortable with someone, that confrontation gets a lot harder. And so I tend to get like nervous when I have to approach something with someone, even if it's just a simple little thing. And so because I'm nervous and I don't like the confrontation, it maybe doesn't come out the way I intend it to. So I guess it's a confidence issue with being able to have that confrontation and that talk. How would you suggest that people who don't do well with confrontation get that inner confidence so they say things they want to say and how they want to, rather than just blurting it out with the nerves?
Well, I think role playing is helpful, even if it feels silly. It might just be doing something like talking to yourself in front of the mirror first before you have it. But also the transparency that I was talking about before. You might say to someone, and this is my personal struggle too, Jen. I mean, I'm confident now, so it's less of an issue, but I'm very uncomfortable with conflict. So one of the things I do is to say, I've been thinking about this, and I've been a little nervous about talking about this because I really don't want to fight with you, but this is on my mind. I actually am transparent about my discomfort. I'll say, I really hate saying stuff like this to people. I don't want you to take it the wrong way, and I'm afraid that you will. I couch things like that to have the harder conversations. So that would be a suggestion for me is, well, first to practice it, but also just to be transparent about why it's hard for you. I think when people know that you're struggling, they might be a little more receptive to you maybe saying it not perfectly, but also it just sort of names the elephant in the living room, and then it becomes easier. When I used to do a lot of public speaking, one of the first things I would say is, "Oh my God, there's so many of you, I'm so nervous." And then the nervousness would go away. So sometimes naming what it is can really, really help.
It's the craziest thing because outside of dealing with PCAs and directing them and having to, maybe confront them about things, I can do confrontations and assertiveness and public speaking, no problem. It's just when you're one-on-one with someone that's so up close and personal with you, and you don't want them to be mad at you or feel uncomfortable or think that you hate them. It's some kind of a totally different thing for me.
Well, it's a real physical vulnerability that I think all of us have experienced at one level or another. So I think trying to avoid those situations when you're physically vulnerable might be good. Like while your attendant is bathing you in the shower, you probably shouldn't say, you know, I'm kind of annoyed at how late you've been lately. I mean, you might wait till the end of the shift. And again, you know, explain how you feel about it, explain how difficult the conversation is for you to have, and also ask them what's going on. Are you enjoying this job? Is there anything that you want to change about this job? When people are doing things like showing up late, sometimes it has nothing to do with you, but sometimes it does. Sometimes they're like, oh, they drag their job. They all drag going to work or whatever we have to do sometimes. So we shouldn't assume that they don't dread coming to our house sometimes when they have stuff going on in their lives. So making sure that we give room for that. How's everything going? You seem kind of stressed out. You don't want to meddle in their personal stuff too much, but is there anything I can do to help? You know, keeping it some level of personalness and letting them say it's just, is there anything in this job that's not working for you? And that's a really good phrase. I've used it a lot. Is there anything not working for you? So I mean, there's all kinds of strategies, but most of it is about being as transparent as possible. Even saying, hi, I'm wondering if I'm a good manager. I'm wondering if you feel like I'm a good employer, or what do you think are the best parts of my employment skills, and what am I not very good at? I'm trying to get better. And if you're transparent about what you're trying to learn and do well, it really, really makes a difference. They're going to talk to you more, unless they're jerks, and then you might not want them to work for you anyway. I've been doing it for 35 years. I'm still very open with all my workers about how I'm trying to do things better. Everything from scheduling to communication to rhythm of the routine to how I train people. I'm always changing things. I'm always asking for suggestions. But all these suggestions I've given today are things that I use daily. So I really be as transparent as possible. Know that we're fallible. Know that we're employers. Know that we have responsibility whether we like it or not. It's our job to be better employers. And know that people don't really always think of us as their employers. They think of us as patients. But if we act like employers, they will eventually start treating us as employers.
The asking feedback thing was something I did a couple of years ago with some of my more long-time very good PCAs, and I was struggling with all my new ones, and I asked my other ones like for feedback on like how I did things, how I interviewed, how I trained, like what would they have liked better about the whole getting used to the job process. And they had a lot of really good feedback and insight and things that I never even thought of. And so I know like we'll check in, and if I have an idea, I'll be like, hey guys, what do you think about maybe we try this for a while? And it's definitely helpful because they have the outside opinion that you can't see.
Right. And it's always, I mean, I would love to be on a fly on the wall. When my workers go home, what do they bitch to their boyfriends and girlfriends about? I would love to know, not just because I'm curious, but because it can help me be a better employee. And so I don't suggest, and I suggest not just doing that with the more long-term workers, but with the new ones. Usually within 2 weeks to a month after a new person started working, I say, how's it going? What do you like about this job? What is frustrating about this job? Are you comfortable telling me what you need? I think, practicing those things, especially with the new people, you set the tone then for them to be able to give you feedback. So, and just remember that you can always do it better. we can all be better employers than we are. So we always have to be looking for best practices. I learned one of my best practices from McDonald's. My sister used to work for McDonald's, and the employees were all required to find their own subs. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a great idea. Because I was having a problem with people always at the last minute asking for Friday or Saturday night off, and it was frustrating, and I had 5 workers, and it was really hard to juggle, and and finally I just changed the rule, and I said, everybody, I'm not sure that you all appreciate how hard it is to find a substitute attendant. So I told them about my experience. I said, this is really hard and really stressful, and I end up calling old friends that don't really want to do it to help me, so I don't have to stay in my wheelchair all night. So from now on, I really need you guys to contact each other about subs unless you're sick. If you're sick, of course, I'll find you a sub. But so I use this practice from some big, ridiculous corporation, and it actually really works well for my team. And they respect the work I do now so much more. So always evolving, always trying new strategies, and being transparent about why you do things, I think really helps. Emily, do you have any wrap-up stuff you want to do? Because we're coming up on 7 o'clock my time.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good time to end. I do want to say thank you for coming. I posted a feedback form link in the chat. If you could provide us with the feedback, I'd really appreciate that. I don't always remember to put it up there, but I want to. Also, if you have an idea for a future topic, or if you'd like to have a discussion again, please, say that in Living with MD, or, make a request. And, I'll do whatever I can to get that going. We have some good stuff coming up, and I would love to get attendance higher. I'm wondering if recording these Hangouts are kind of a bad thing, because then people don't come because they think they're going to be recorded. But then at the same time, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, do you have any statistics on how many people are viewing the recordings?
Alex, by any chance, can you tell?
Yes, I can. I don't have that data right off the top of my head, but I can see it.
Yeah, there's YouTube views and stuff that you can see. Like, I think it goes through YouTube, right? So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with attendance. I wish it was better, because it was such a fabulous session. I hope that everybody got all out of it. I know I did. And it was really great. So thank you so much, Alana.
Thanks, Alana. Really good advice.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alana.
And thank you all for participating. I made you do some hard work.
Yeah, it was kind of hard at first. I felt like I was in the classroom again or something. Like, but no, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was really fun.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any last minute questions or thoughts? No? Okay. All right. Have a good night.
Everybody, thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.